not globalism, will be our credo.
Please continue to hold for the next available representative.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
We appreciate you waiting and waiting. What is it you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Disconnected.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new live stream, another election live stream. Tonight we have the most important primary election of 2025, one could argue. We have the New York City primary election happening in a couple of weeks, but today is for the most important, probably most contested race of 2025, the New Jersey governor's race. So polls have closed. Let's get to 100 likes so we could begin. And feel free to send in super chats throughout the stream if you guys would like to, ask any questions, have any questions answered. It's definitely an election probably not a lot of people thought was taking place tonight, but it is something that is worth watching. Now, we know who both frontrunners are. We know that on the Republican side, Jack Ciattarelli just got the Trump endorsement, but he has kept his distance from Trump at times, which some might chalk up to political savviness being in the state of New Jersey, which has moved to the right, but not to the right enough to elect an outwardly pro-Trump governor. And on the Democrat side, Mickey Sherrill was racking up the establishment support. Meanwhile, you have some further left people like Ross Baraka who are in the mix. And if he won the nomination, I think Democrats would really struggle in the general. So polls have closed, and we have almost got to 100 likes. Hit that like button, subscribe. We're 2 likes away. Let's get there. Let's get hopefully get to some results early on. Otherwise, we'll just be sitting here waiting for quite some time. But either way, we have almost 300 people in chat. We hit 100 likes, and the camera will go on. And New Jersey, we're waiting on results out of the state of New Jersey. It is still very early on in the evening, of course. I don't know how long we're going to be going for. I don't think that we need to stream for any more than 2 hours, but I think it's good to at least kind of cover the results as they do come in. There's also some other developments that we could talk about, and the main one that I've seen is this poll, and we can go back and forth, but Democrats have decided to die on the hill of National Guard causing problems. It's like saying that the fireman is to blame for arson, which is the most ridiculous thing that you could possibly fathom. But when it comes down to the approval poll of Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard, 59% should be much higher, but still by 20 points, people approve of Trump's deployment of the National Guard. So Democrats that are dying on the hill of this being a bad thing, they are not in lockstep with the American people. They want to die on the worst hills ever. You have the case with the supposed Maryland man who is here questionably legally and was deported for being MS-13. Turns out he has sex crimes in his past as well. He's under fire, under indictment for human trafficking. These are the people that they decide to cling to kind of be their martyrs, be their heroes. And it's like you have these people, these rioters in Los Angeles. You have the MS-13 alleged gang member, alleged human trafficker. You have Luigi Mangione, somebody who shoots somebody. You have like all these people, the guy who was supporting Hamas that they sent back to the Middle East, was on a student visa. You have all the worst people. George Floyd, somebody who, was addicted to fentanyl and robbed people, was a career criminal. They'd made him a martyr. They were building statues of this guy. Like all the people that the left have been supporting and propping up over the years, they're all the worst people ever you could possibly imagine. It's hilarious to see how that kind of shakes out, but it's honestly a battle between good and evil at this point from an objective lens. That's what American politics has truly become. So, we'll see what happens, and we have results in the governor's primary, and two very different results here. You have Gloucester County, Steve Sweeney at 41%, over half the vote is in. And then you have Hudson County, Mickey, I'm not even entirely sure how to pronounce the first name, but Cheryl is at 41%. So a little bit of back and forth there. Meanwhile, as expected, Jack Ciattarelli is running up the score. It's very early on, but that's a good sign because it shows that the Trump base, even though he has had his, iffiness at times, the endorsement from Trump combined with his establishment tendencies kind of fused together and are giving him a big bedrock of support in the primary, 3/4 of the vote already out of the gate, which is good. It's a good sign. The party's relatively unified, and the Democrats now votes are in out of Newark, Essex County, and Cheryl is also picking up a lot of votes there. Now, that's kind of her neck of the woods. We'll see as the rest of the state kind of shakes out, but I would have expected her to win by around 20 when it's all said and done. On the Republican side, Jack is so far doing better than I probably anticipated. I thought he would win by like 40 or 50, but for him to be up by 63, I know it's very early on. That's true. But he is hoping for a comeback. He almost won in 2021. He narrowly fell short. Now it's an open seat. He's going to give the Democrat a run for their money. Is he going to win the election? It really just depends because Phil Murphy's even more unpopular now than he was back then. So we have results already out of New Jersey. And by the way, guys, we have our Super Chat goal. It's the same as last stream. We'll see if we can hit it this time. $10 Super Chats and above. If we can get to 15, we already have 2, then we will have hit our goal. So say it louder for the people in back. Please sent 10. Stephen Kanizik sent 10 saying National Guard deployed to California is okay. U.S. Marines deployed is nice. But if Trump won't deploy the roof Koreans, then how can the insurrection be ended properly? It's a good question. But you can't deploy those people. All jokes aside, those were the citizens who were stepping up. So we have more votes. Hunterdon County shows Jack at 57, Bill at 27. So Spadea is doing a little bit better there. Other than that, I think we understand who's going to win the Republican primary. We have a good idea at who's probably going to win on the Democrat side as well. But still, when you have more of a divided primary field where your frontrunner's not even getting 40% of the vote, that's a problem. And when we saw, 2022, that hurt a lot of Republican chances in a lot of these races because the Democrats were unified. They picked a candidate. They cleared the field. The Republicans, it was a tug of war back and forth. That's not a good thing when you're leading your party into a general election. No matter who wins the nomination, a stronger candidate or a weaker candidate, you would like to have a primary field that is relatively unified behind one candidate. It's going to help you out. And for the Democrat field where the frontrunner is getting 1/3 of the vote, and you have 5 months to campaign. Democrats usually come home, but still, You have this divide. You have an unpopular incumbent. It's a state that's moving to the right. The question is, can you get enough of those low propensity Trump voters out to vote? Jack has the endorsement from Trump. He has a lot more access to money. He has some appeal to voters who didn't vote for Trump. He's going to need that to win in a state like New Jersey. Overall, it's possible as he passes 70% of the vote in the primary. I have my grievances with him. He would not be my ideal candidate, but this is New Jersey. You're not going to have like an electorate that is skewed right, where a MAGA type would do extraordinarily much better, but you can't alienate the base. It does seem as if those concerns, given the primary results, little bit tempered, not fully tempered. We'll see how Bill Spadea reacts to the results as well, because he has a big vocal fan base. And if you want to win, you got to unite the party. And it's a two-way street. It really is. I think Jack messed up when he was out there hanging out with Chris Christie. Nobody likes Chris Christie. Democrats don't like Chris Christie. Independents don't like Chris Christie. And one state that definitely doesn't like Chris Christie is New Jersey. So there's that. But does he have this possibility for a revenge arc based on how he's perceived and who he's associating himself with? He does. So more votes are coming in on the Democrat side, and it's just a fractured state field. You have Sean Spiller winning Cumberland County. Meanwhile, Camden County is, a good chunk of the vote is in. Sherrill is up, but Sherrill's not up by a lot. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch. I think Sherrill probably wins, but I don't know. Stephen Kanizik for 10 says, I think I speak for all of us by asking, who did DeSantis and Max Nordau endorse for New Jersey governor? Bramnick, I have no idea. I don't know if that's a joke or not, but somebody said race call for New Jersey GOP. I think we can call it. I think Jack Citarelli, I want to make sure I'm not butchering the name, but he's definitely the favorite. Meanwhile, Cheryl, it's a lot of, can we pronounce any of these names? I mean, Bramnick is like the only one that you're not going to butcher on the first time, but it's like all these names are kind of tough to pronounce. But let's check. I want to check New Jersey. I want to check the district map as well. Cheryl is a congresswoman and represents the 11th district, so we could kind of gauge the support. It's mainly in Essex County. It's in Morris County and Passaic County. Now, those counties Republicans have been doing well in lately, so it'll be even more of a tug of war as to are Republicans going to be able to go out there and really win over some of those voters who might be more familiar with Cheryl, or are trends just going to be too much to swamp Cheryl's support in the state? So it's definitely going to be the election to watch. I'm not going to say Republicans are favored. I don't want to use the T word, either T word yet, toss up or tilt. I think it start off as a lean Democrat race that Republicans have a clear pathway to possibly flip. But given how a lot of these off-year elections have gone, especially since the Dobbs v. Jackson decision, it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. But I think there's a little bit of an appetite for an upset. I encourage people to, if they're going to focus on any election this year, New Jersey's the one. Virginia kind of seems like a lost cause. I don't know what campaign Winsome Sears is running, but it's not a very good one. So given that being the case, and given the fact that Democrats probably are going to head for a trifecta in the state of Virginia, for better or worse, mostly worse, almost honestly all of it's worse, but New Jersey is that state to watch. It is that state to focus on. Atlantic County, Jack at 81%, so a big support base, big turnout overall for him compared to the other Republicans, but still we're looking at 7% of the votes being in. When you crunch the numbers on that, you're talking about roughly 300,000 people showing up on the Republican side. The Democrats, obviously, they have that advantage. There's a lot more registered Democrats still in the state of New Jersey, but it is a state that is moving to the right, and you have a lot of independent voters. and how they would come out and break down is another very interesting thing to consider. But even so, like, if we're going to be honest here, Cheryl's only at 33.1%, and her home base is in, and she's only at 41. So while the other candidates are likely going to split the vote enough to give Cheryl the win there, it's going to be interesting to watch the margins and how they really tend to shake out when it's all said and done, because you do have a lot of fractured support, and she's not doing that well in the southern part of the state, which, again, is crucial. But a lot of the population, it's up here in the Newark area. Also, how will the election day votes go? Will they go in her column? Because usually you'll have the mail first, or sometimes it comes in later. New Jersey's a weird state when it comes down to how the ballots end up being counted. But either way, guys, make sure you guys like the stream. Let's get to 300 likes. We have 700 viewers. Make sure you guys subscribe if you're new. Make sure you guys send in super chats if you have any super chats. But you have a lot of people that are somewhat upset about the results and saying they won't vote. And it's like, you know what? You can have that mindset, man. You can have that mindset if you want to have it. But I don't want to hear a word from people like you who complain about the shitty state that your state is in because, your governor, your gubernatorial candidate in a blue state wasn't perfect. Like, if you want to have that mindset, have your mindset. Sit home. Don't complain. That's the thing, because you can have this mindset. It's a destructive mindset. I can disagree with it, but you can say what you want, but you can't complain when it comes time to have your new governor in charge who makes Phil Murphy look like a conservative by comparison. So do whatever you want, but don't complain. And if you don't vote, don't complain, especially if you're one of these people who says, I'm not voting for this person because they're not, perfect or whatever. The time to talk was the primary, but in certain states, you're not going to be able to have certain candidates. And I wish you could have a much better candidate. I wish you could have a Bill Spadea. I wish Mike Crispy could be governor of New Jersey. But realistically speaking, I don't think the state's there yet. And I think that's why he decided not to run, because the state really wasn't fully all the way there yet. I think there's a growing opportunity, but you're going to have that growth and that drive if you have somebody in there that is a Republican governor who can at least, mold the state in some way, shape, or form. That's kind of what we're talking about here. So you have, all these people in here that'll say, I'm not voting for Jack or whatever. I'm not a big Jack guy, at least Jack Citarelli, but you don't have the right to complain about the state your state is in when you're not even, voting for somebody because there's like 10% of their ideology, much of which is performative anyways, that you don't happen to like. So that's my grievance with that. I feel like the Democrats, it doesn't matter. They'll vote for a John Tester in Montana, and they'll show up for him, and they'll show up for Joe Manchin in West Virginia. But the Republicans with the general election, nobody's asking you to elect Phil Scott or even Larry Hogan. He's much better than those choices by a long shot, by a mile, and much better than the potential opposition. And if you have an opportunity and, I'm not voting, or I'm voting third party, it just doesn't ever lead to anything good. It just never does. It really never does. I'm going to sit it out. When has that ever worked for a Republican? I'll sit out for the next one. You get a lot of people like that in Michigan in 2018 because Pat Colbeck didn't get the nomination for governor. And then you get Gretchen Whitmer in there for 8 years, and then you get the lockdowns. And you're seriously going to tell me there's no difference between these two people? Like, you obviously can understand that there is. And you may not realize it at first, but when the gas taxes go up, or when there's a new pandemic, and you see a state like Ohio that happens to be wide open, but New Jersey is completely locked down, yeah, you understand that you really messed up in that department. So that's my take on it. I feel like people that don't understand basic pragmatism are just holding the country back. It's one thing for the average voter to not pay attention, and I think they should pay attention. It's another thing for people to pay attention and not be able to take the easy win because of some, meaningless hang-up that they have that isn't going to impact things in the grand scheme of things. That's what I have to say. So Crunchkey says, forget about Virginia. Sears is an idiot, should have ran for re-election. Focus all efforts on New Jersey. Cheryl's favored right now, but is not invincible by any means. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I appreciate it. We already have 4 out of the 15 for our goal. So, I mean, it's an interesting primary on the Democrat side. They're fractured. Let them be the fractured party. Not let us be the fractured party, because we have a lot of problems with this state. In New Jersey, I'm not from New Jersey, but I know a lot of people from New Jersey. They're upset about their state. And Donald Trump endorsed Jack for a reason. I'm not the biggest Jack fan, but he endorsed him for a reason because he can win. These other people may be better on the issues, but can they win? Will they be able to? Even with the people that'll claim they're not going to vote, you'll probably have enough big money spent against these people because that's how it works. I'm not a fan of it. Not a fan of the establishment, but you have to work within the system if you want to get any meaningful change. And that's kind of where we're at right now with the New York governor's race. A lot of people were complaining about Youngkin too. That didn't really pan out, too well, because most people in the real world, he had the Trump endorsement. He kept his at arm's length. Obviously, I think New Jersey is a state that back then Jack was being overly antagonistic towards Trump. I think it hurt him, to be honest. Don't get me wrong. But people that are sitting out the election because of some performative stuff that these Republicans do in a blue state because they don't understand who can win, who can't win, I think that's a problem. Maybe that's just my 2 cents is not worth anything to you, and that's fine, but I told you so. I don't want to hear I don't want to hear anybody complaining about the state that their state is in if they're not showing up for a candidate because, they weren't perfect. That's what I'll say. So Decision Desk called it for Cheryl. I mean, they tend to call states pretty early, but I do think that, she's going to win. By how much, I don't know. But it's interesting to look at the results here. Josh Gottheimer, he's going to get a lot of votes from his particular district. You have that one county that's in. He'll win his district, just like Cheryl will win her district. The question is by how much? How does this affect the end result? There's a lot we don't really know at the 30% mark, because we have 30% of the vote in already. And from the looks of it, it seems like the Democrats are going to top out at probably around 750,000 primary votes. The Republicans, on the other hand, they may get close to 500,000. Not a total beatdown. Because keep in mind, the Republican registration is much lower in New Jersey. They do much better with independents, kind of like how Pennsylvania was, in like 2016. It's actually less blue, but the Democrats have that baked-in advantage there. The Republican primary was much less divided. I think a lot of people know that Jack is the favorite, and also Republicans being the lower propensity party, less people show up for primary elections. So when you take all these things together, it's a decent showing for the Republicans. Obviously, we don't know what the end total result is going to be on either side, but the fact that Democrats have that advantage, they're going to take it and run with it, probably on social media, thinking it's going to impact November, when in reality, I don't think that that's really the best argument that they have for why they would be favored to win this race. I've conceded that I think that they're favored. I don't think that they're guaranteed. I think there's a little bit of work to do. But the fact we're talking about New Jersey in a year where Donald Trump's in the White House, Democrats have that, energy advantage, being the mindless drones that they are, I think is very encouraging. I think it's extremely encouraging in the state of New Jersey. So we will see what happens, guys. And feel free, if you have any super chats, feel free to send them in, whether they count towards the goal or don't count towards the goal, because keeps the conversation going as we await for more results when we only have 17% on the Republican side, 30% on the Democrat side. We'll stream for at least an hour or until we get to, I don't know if we're going to get above like 80% but we kind of have a picture of who the winners are already. We'll keep streaming. We'll look at the results. We'll look in chat. We'll see what you guys have to say, because it's been a chaotic week with the ICE protests, and it's been a chaotic week with all the other stuff. But it does seem as if this is something that is not a winning issue for the Democrats, as literally everybody with half a brain could anticipate that it wouldn't be a winning issue. You have people rioting in the streets. You want to blame Trump. You think that's actually going to work? Like, I'm not saying that Trump's approval rating is going to surge because of this, but people acting like Trump is to blame for protests that are mindless, it's ridiculous. Even if he did escalate things by sending in people, I think that people are looking at the main root cause and saying that that's still the fault of the protesters. Why would it not be the fault of the protesters? If sending in National Guardsmen gets more people to show up and cause violence, that's the fault of those people, not the guardsmen. Newsom is siding with all the worst people because he thinks it's going to help him win a primary where the field is now full of crazy people that are showing up for these things on the Democrat side. He wants to win the primary. He sees this as his time to shine. And as a result, he's going to go balls to the wall and, sociopathic stupidity. And he thinks it's going to work out for him. And to an extent, it will. I mean, it's going to get people talking about him. And no press is bad press at this time, at this stage in the game for 2028. Everybody knows Newsom's going to run. Newsom's going to run. Pete Buttigieg is going to run. Kamala Harris might run. I think AOC is going to run. I don't know how well she's going to do. You might get some other far left names in the mix. But it is true. I think that when you look at somebody like an AOC, horrible general election candidate, but has more of a shot in the primary now than ever. Because the whole, young Bernie wing, I think a lot of that was anti-Hillary in 2016. He also came off less like a crazy person in 2016. But even 2020, being able to get 40% of that primary electorate, imagine how the past 8 years have gone where you have, old boomer Democrats dying out, some moderates leaving the party, new people entering the fold, that millennial voting bloc being a larger share of the pie. Yeah, people like AOC have more of a shot to win now. It just depends on what roadblocks the Obama-Clinton establishment are going to pull, but they couldn't even stop the last nominee. Obama didn't want Kamala Harris. She ended up being the nominee. And it's like all the crazy fringes within the Obama administration, the millennial types, those people ran the Biden White House and they ran the country into the ground. And now they're running the Democratic Party into the ground. And I say let them do it because it's entertaining to watch. But the question is, who do they nominate? We still don't know. We did that tier list for sure that kind of broke down a lot of the possibilities. Tom Sapp for 5 says it would be nice to have a Republican governor in New Jersey. It would be. I think that it could very well happen. What I don't want to see is, the Democrats go out there and steamroll the Republicans in the state because Republicans didn't show up. I'm not saying it's because of people, pearl clutching or whatever. I'm saying the fact that Democrats have done very well, especially since Dobbs v. Jackson, but a lot of it is realignment based in these off-year elections. And we will see if that continues. It did in Wisconsin, which, again, I think that those races tend to be a little bit less polarized, maiden abortion referendum, but it was still Harris plus 6, Harris plus 7 of an electorate that actually showed up, and we can't have that happen. Now, New Jersey's different than Wisconsin. A lot of those Trump low-propensity voters showed up in 21 in New Jersey and Virginia, and they showed up again to a lesser extent in 22. So we have to make sure that it happens in 25, and I think it could. If Republicans actually put effort and money into New Jersey in 21, they would have had the governorship by now. But this is a state where the governorship historically, and it's not always the best benchmark in the polarization era, but the state is depolarizing itself, where they pass the ball back and forth. You have Democrat governor. I think Phil Murphy was the first Democrat governor to win re-election going back a long time, because that's how dominant Republicans have been at the governorship level. And even though incumbent governors have been very popular and very dominant, he still was, polarization just barely carried him But now it seems like the state is definitely moving. It went from Biden plus 17 to Harris plus not even 6. So if we can continue to move the state in the direction that it needs to be moved in, there's a lot of hope for the state in the future. It's not guaranteed, but we have 2 more super chats, so we're now 6 out of 15. Traveling with Joe B for 10 says, I live in Cheryl's district. Her house race was rated solid D in 2020, and she only won 53 to 46 to a no-name. In 22, she lucked out with gerrymandering. She's not that strong, a fake moderate. That's important to note. Also, Ben Williams says, watch consistently for over 5 years. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Ben. I appreciate the super chat. And, I mean, it is true. If you have somebody like Cheryl, she's not that popular. She just might be more electable, dare I use that word, compared to somebody like a Ross Baraka or some of these other people. But even so, she's not clearly that liked. She only has 34% in her primary. It's looking similarly to like the Ohio Senate primary from 2022, the one that J.D. Vance was running in. He got Trump's endorsement. He got a third of the vote roughly, but it did hurt him in the general election. Now, people were using that to say, the general election result to say that Donald Trump picked a bad VP pick. Obviously, they were wrong about that, but these things do matter in terms of your ability to get out unscathed. And I think that Jack Ciattarelli's a much stronger Republican candidate than Tim Ryan was a Democrat candidate. And, that underperformance wasn't that big because Vance was relatively strong and did coalesce enough of the base to win by a respectable margin. But somebody like Mickey Sherrill, she's not really coalescing the Democrat base as it stands now. And we don't know what the end result of the primary is going to be, but you have a very divided field. You have a very strong candidate on the opposing side, and you have electoral hubris in these off years from Democrats, which, I mean, to be fair, they've been doing well. But these governor's races do tend to be more higher in terms of the turnout level compared to a lot of these other things. So we'll monitor the election for sure as we get closer, but you have a relatively unified Republican field. Jack getting the Trump endorsement, whether people believe he fully earned it or not, is probably going to help him coalesce the field even further. I don't know if Trump probably does not need to be tied to him at the hip, just like he wasn't tied to Youngkin at the hip when Youngkin won a blue state. But you need enough support to build a coalition, go out and win. And it seems like even though there is this divide within the New Jersey side of things, because you have some people that are questioning, certain things about Jack Ciattarelli's past, when it comes down to somebody like Mickey Sherrill, she's getting half of his vote total compared to comparatively speaking within the primaries. And we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. We have another super chat from PT saying, do you think the fires in LA earlier this year and the current riots will hurt the Dems in the midterms? Is a red tsunami coming? Well, I think California is a little bit separate than the rest of the country. And in California, even in 2018, when Democrats won a lot of these House races, which were done in some cases by potentially shady means, they didn't even win them by that much. So when you look at it, even in a blue wave, as they love to call it the blue wave year, it was not a blue wave in California, which has gotten much redder since. So I think that there's an argument to be made that you're going to have a more competitive election. I'm not saying California is going to elect a Republican governor. I think that depending on if they ran a strong candidate, it could get interesting depending on who the Democrats put up. But I think California as a whole, it's not really ready for that. But these House races, if Democrats are not able to flip any in California, but Republicans are, then Democrats could be screwed because that means they have to flip other seats elsewhere. And if you're if you're losing seats in California and possibly New York and possibly Texas and maybe even Ohio from redistricting, where are you going to get those excess seats from? Because the election map is not looking too good for the Democrats, given where the House races are. They may retake the House, but if they're in a competitive environment, and again, it's not a one-to-one in these off years or midterm years. Every state kind of has their own environment. There's many factors at play. But if Republicans are flipping, like if they can flip 5 seats, Democrats are going to need to flip, 10 when they otherwise would have needed to flip like 3 on net. So that's kind of where, padding your margins. They need to be going on offense and playing defense, because the more they put the Democrats on offense, the more opportunities for the Republicans and the less opportunities for the Democrats. So I think some of that might be due to the riots. They don't make Newsom look good in a general election. Obviously, he's not on the ballot because he's not going to be governor anymore. But if they go with Kamala Harris, who against the big bad orange man in California still did 10 points worse than Biden in 2020, she is a chronic underperformer in the state of California. And if Republicans can nominate somebody who is a decent candidate and born in the United States, no, Steve Hilton is not going to be Arnold 2.0. It does not work that way. There has to be a stronger candidate. They don't have to win, but they have to compete. And if that candidate does exist, whether it's Steve Garvey running again or Brian Dale running again or one of these other people, Lan T. Chen, whatever his name is, running again, they would pose a serious threat to Kamala Harris and probably force Democrats to divert resources and cost the Democrats plenty of 2 or 3 House seats with the down ballot effects alone, because we kind of saw that come into play in 2022 with the down ballot effects on some of these House races. Republicans, if they perform better at the top of the ticket in the Midwest, they would have done much better in some of these down ballot races. It's not always indicative, but it does matter. It's why Republicans did so well in Florida in some of these House races compared to expectations, and why they did so well in New York, but they didn't do so hot in Indiana's 1st district, or some of those races in Michigan, one of which the Republicans did flip with Donald Trump on the ticket. So, I think that you can't really make the case that you're going to see a red tsunami across the nation from it. But in California, it can have an impact. Absolutely. I mean, we can't ignore that. Many Democrats will say that, it's ridiculous that would have an impact, but they don't understand that they were wrong. They were wrong about the Maui fires and Hawaii and how it would impact Hawaii, because Hawaii moved to the right by 10 percentage points, and it probably would have moved right by a similar, albeit lesser margin, if it wasn't for the fires, because Hawaii just has those demographics that Republicans have been doing better with, especially in full turnout elections, and Democrats have been doing weaker with. So it's common sense. A lot of people on the left like to ignore it, but it's 100% true. So you have now more votes in, still 31% of the vote on the Democrat side, 21% on the Republican side. Republicans looking to have around 500,000 votes, a little bit less. Democrats looking to have around 760,000 votes, a little bit more than that potentially. But again, like I said, total turnout in the primary is not fully indicative of how the state is going to go, especially due to its large, independent, working class population, which came out strong for Jack in 2021 when he wasn't even endorsed by Donald Trump. So we'll see what happens. It's a different ballgame for sure than 2021 in multiple ways, but it's still expected to be a very competitive election. So it is one to watch for sure. So let's see. We have many more people in chat. And feel free, guys, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, send them in via Super Chat. We have 7 out of the 15 for our goal. We have almost 1,000 live viewers. Like the stream as well. Let's get to 500 likes. Let's get to 500. We have more than enough manpower to do it, so let's get it done. So more results on the way. But nevertheless, it does seem as if Mickey Sherrill is going to be the winner on the Democrat side in a very, very fractured field, and Jack Ciattarelli is going to be the favorite on the Republican side. They already called it on the New York Times, Decision Desk, Associated Press. We have called it. Decision Desk is called the Democratic primary, but I don't think it's going to be by a ridiculous margin. So it's important to watch the margins, watch the results as they pour in. Republicans will have 37% higher turnout than the 2021 primary, despite it being less competitive, according to the New York Times turnout projections. That is from the live chat here, and it's technically true. I believe it. Now, the Democrats are also going to have more, but still, that's a relatively good sign. It shows engagement is high. Engagement does exist, and we're getting it up. Democrats also are getting it up too, which, again, I'm not talking about the fact that they have a contested field now, but I'm mainly talking about the fact that there's just more engagement overall. But yeah, they had 339,000 total votes, and now the Republicans are in a much, much better position. Phil Murphy actually got more votes than all the Republicans combined, and he had no opposition. There was no real reason for people to show up for him, besides maybe some of the down ballot stuff. And the Republicans still got outvoted. Now, there's a big primary on the Democrat side. They're outvoting the Republicans, but not by a ridiculous amount. I don't think it's really worth reading into it too much, but there's plenty of votes remaining. It does seem as if Cheryl's going to be the favorite, but you do see on the Republican side plenty of votes remaining as well. You do have Ocean County coming in. That's the big Republican vote dump in the state. Donald Trump won it by over 100,000 votes, 100,000 raw votes, that is. So the New York Times has projected Mickey Sherrill the winner on the Democrat primary, and I also will project Mickey Sherrill the Democrat primary winner, but not a very unified field behind her. So it's important to note. You didn't have the most unified field. It was not the most impressive victory overall for her, and that's not all that good. So we'll see. But I do think it's going to be a very close general election. I think that if you are Jack Ciattarelli, you got to run a comprehensive campaign, and you have to go into these places where Republicans are doing well with Donald Trump on the top of the ticket for the first time in history. You can't just go to Ocean County and go to some of these places like even Somerset, where they're like, oh, it's the swing county. Swing counties exist. Counties that are moving to the left exist. All that stuff is true, but you have to find and target the lower propensity voters and get them out. And it's tougher to do in a midterm or off-year election, but it doesn't mean that it's completely impossible. And if you run a strong campaign that can target their concerns well and give them a reason to turn out, they're going to turn out. If not, then it becomes a little bit of a problem. So, definitely it's a little bit of an uphill climb. As for what the Democrats are doing, they're just like in disarray once again. Now, Cheryl established herself as the favorite. I mean, she got endorsed by the entire establishment. If not, it probably would have been a very, very competitive primary to watch. And now you have the New York City mayoral primary coming up. That's going to be interesting. So you have disgraced governor versus far left lunatic. And that's going to be a lot of fun. New York is screwed either way, but you could hope that maybe, just maybe, enough people are going to wake up because of it and become, I guess you would say, more to the right. And that's, I guess, what we'd be aiming for. So I don't know. I don't know what we would be rooting for in that department. But when it comes down to the endorsements in this primary, you had a lot for Cheryl. You had Alyssa Slotkin, plenty of Congress representatives, Tom Malinowski, he was in New Jersey. You had all sorts of organizations endorse. I mean, you had many split endorsements. It seemed like Josh Gottheimer was getting some more of like the, I guess you would say, moderate, but mainly performative moderates. Jared Golden's on that list as an endorser there. I mean, you have, as for some of like the far left people, who were they endorsing? Ross Baraka, he was that candidate. He didn't do super well. Now, if you look at the primary polls, which we don't know the final result, but it had Cheryl in the either high 20s, low 30s. Everybody else was in a little bit of a distant second. She couldn't really coalesce a lot of the undecideds despite being the front runner. Some of these polls had her at 33 already. It does seem as if the undecideds just went all over the place. That's not really a good sign. It's not really the best sign for her. But again, we have months to go before the election. Democrats start off as the favorites. Doesn't mean they're going to end up being the favorites. Doesn't mean we can't take this governorship away from them. That's the main takeaway. So XJ Cherokee Bear says Chunk Yogurt is saying that he wants his bacon grease. Thank you for the 2 with the super chat there. And again, if you guys would like to send in money via super chat, any questions, concerns, comments, feel free. You could use that super chat function as well, whether we hit the goal or we don't hit the goal, because I don't know how long we're going to be streaming this, but the more super chats we get, the longer we probably keep the conversation going, for the record. So you have all of this drama with the ICE protests going on. You have Donald Trump, and this is this is recent, within the past hour or so, you have a trade deal, or at least the framework for the trade deal with China that they've agreed to. So I imagine the Dow futures are doing pretty well. What do I know? We'll see. But you have, the number one trade adversary coming to the table. They're in talks. They're making progress. That's a good sign. So either way, and it's interesting because as for the New Jersey primary, there's a lot of talk about Bill Spadea being like the better candidate from some of the MAGA wing, but Chris Christie publicly backed the guy as well, from what I understand is to be the case. So you kind of have a lot of moving parts to this election. I think we got to unite behind the nominee. I wasn't really that vocal. I didn't really have that much of a dog in the fight, but we got to make sure we can at least unify the party. And I think we're going to do a better job of that than the Democrats if you look at the primary result, because that is a brutal primary field. I don't even think she's going to hold at 35. Maybe she does. Just depends on how some of these other votes come in. But you see some counties going to you have counties going to the last place finisher right now. That's not really a great sign for party unification, but what do I know? But other than that, you had the trade deal. You had the protests turned riots that are still going on, spreading to Chicago. It's not just in LA anymore. You have all sorts of places in the nation, and it makes you believe that they're being funded. I don't know how many people would organically just show up and start holding flags of foreign nations and just saying, stop following the law. Like, you would have to believe these people are paid. And I'm sure some of them are, some of them are not. They're trying to cause unrest, blame Donald Trump, force that unrest. It's not working. It's not working at all. Nobody's buying it. Not a single person that's on the fence who voted for Trump in 2024 is buying it. I can say that at a minimum. The video maker 2341 for 5 says, I know people outside of New York City who want Mondani to win the mayor, but I don't. That commie is going to destroy New York City further. From a New Yorker. Sliwa 25. Is he running? I believe he is running again. He did relatively well given the circumstances. Now, is he going to be able to win the general? I don't know. I don't think any Republican can, but he did pretty well. He has a big support base there, and I think that I really hope he does well and makes as competitive as he possibly can. Mike Oxard for 5 says, I'm in New Jersey, didn't vote in the primary, but will in the general. I think the idea of Jack having a legitimate chance of winning could help turnout. It could, and it could also bolster turnout on the other side. But the problem with that argument is the Democrats always have had this tendency to show up in all these little elections. So our goal is to drum up turnout on our side, and that's the only way we're going to win. Donald Trump in the state of New Jersey, if you want to look at the end results from 2024, he was able to get almost 2 million votes. He only fell short by 262,000 votes. Sounds like a lot, but I mean, that's not a ridiculous amount of votes, all things considered. 5.9% in the state of New Jersey. Donald Trump won Arizona by a similar margin in both raw votes and percent. And that was supposed to be a state Democrats they hoped to hold. I think a lot of people by election day knew they weren't going to hold it. But Mike Oxard okay, we did that one. Someone said no way he read that name. We always read that name. He's been around for a very long time. He's earned the right to have his comical troll name be read on the live stream. So we're at, 41% of the vote. So I promise I'll stream until the end of the hour at a minimum. We could say that. I don't know how much longer we're going to go past it because we kind of know who the winners are on both sides. But Mike Oxard for 2 says it's his legal name. See, if it's his legal name, I have to read it. If it's on his account, I have to read it. So it's not like it's it's not like it's that much of a troll. But it is a troll. It's funny. We're fine with a little humor here. We're not going to take things that serious. But one thing I will take serious is the Republicans' prospects of winning New Jersey, because it's there. The math is there. You need to just drum up your turnout. Now, Democrats they're going to be starting off with a baked-in advantage, but it's turnout. It's the base plus strategy. You turn out your own base, and then you have to add some independents. Somebody like Jack can flip voters that are maybe anti-Trump but might have voted for Chris Christie back in the day. It's crazy to think about that guy winning any election, let alone in a blue state. But, 2 votes you gain. If you get a voter that turns out that wouldn't have turned out, that's +1. You get a flip, that's +2. That's kind of the thing that helped Trump win Michigan by the margin he did, because when it came to the Arab vote, the Muslim vote, it's less than 2% of Michigan, but you're talking about overall, maybe 100-some thousand voters. And if you flip, 40,000 of them, that's 80,000 votes. And if you get, 40,000 to stay home or vote third party, and that's another 40,000 votes, that's 120,000 votes. That's the entire margin that dictated Michigan. And then obviously just do a little bit better in other parts of the state. And that's what Donald Trump did. That's how he won Michigan. He won it by almost 100,000 votes when it was all said and done, in part because of that. So it's all about the base plus strategy, and you're going to have to make sure that you're turning out your base. And in some cases, you're going to have to flip voters if you're, depending on the state. In a swing state, you should be trying to flip voters. Turnout matters. If you're in a blue state like New Jersey, you're almost certainly going to have to flip voters, especially because propensity isn't going to be favoring you. Like in Georgia, even if Georgia goes blue, but you have a year where black turnout is not super high, but Republicans get their base out, it's still going to go Republican because, the Democrats didn't do their job. But when the shoe's on the other foot and you're talking about the industrial Midwest, where it's more ancestrally Democrat, and the voters who vote Republican are lower turnout usually, and they're not all that married to the Republican Party as much as they are to, Trump or Trumpism or whatever, they're going to have to, adapt the party brand as well. I can't believe YouTube allows really long names. Wow, insane for £2. Says time to dab. Well, I will if we hit the goal. Otherwise, I don't really have an incentive, but I appreciate the £2. We'll see what that ends up translating to when it's all said and done. But me says, did you hear by... okay. See, we'll draw a line at some super chats. We don't have to read that one. But I appreciate the 2. But yeah, New Jersey, that's definitely going to be a state to target. You have Virginia as kind of a lost cause, in my opinion. A lot of money behind Spanberger, not really a campaign being run by Sears. That's a state that, it'll really hurt to lose the attorney general, but it does seem as if that race, while it might be more competitive, is not exactly going to have much of a chance at going in the Republican column as it would if you had a competitive race at the top of the ticket. So then 2026, those governorships are going to be crucial. You have Kansas, you have Arizona, you have Michigan, and I don't know what the other target would be for the Republicans, whether it's Wisconsin, depending on who runs, New York, because Hochul's so unpopular that it's become competitive. I think they'll hold Georgia. I think they'll hold Nevada without a problem. Ohio could be interesting. Iowa could be interesting because you have less of a polarization. Depends on who runs. You know, if you have Sherrod Brown running against Vivek, I think things could get interesting and possibly too close for comfort. And I don't really want us to be falling short in that state. But you never know. You never know. I can't believe for 2. Okay, thank you for the other troll super chat. Well, we're going to draw the line at Mike Oxard. I think we've made that clear. The video maker 2341 says, an aunt of mine said to me to vote for Zoran because he's Muslim. Madness. She told my Dem parents to do the same. I'll tell them to vote for Cuomo, a result of importing the third world en masse. Well, I will say that you could make the case that, you know, if you live in New York and you want to stay in New York, I understand the whole like Cuomo strategic vote thing, even though he'll still be awful. But if you're like an accelerationist and you understand like New York, you want to leave, you want other people to leave, it's a little bit of a sadistic mindset to have, some people will say, but I understand why people would do the opposite and vote for the far left guy because of the fact that, yeah, well, we'll just plunge New York into the depths of, you know, a Marxist, tyrannical city that's broken even more so than it already is, which it's a mess now. And you have like a moderate governor or moderate mayor, relatively speaking, who still is corrupt. And part of it is, yeah, the system's going to go after him because he will occasionally criticize them and they'd be more willing to throw him under the bus. And they're going to have to throw people under the bus so long as they're throwing people like Trump, in jail or trying to throw him in jail because it makes him look bipartisan in the process. So, yeah. Okay, we have a lot of spammers, guys. You got to stop spamming. We'll start with a 5-minute timeout. Hopefully it doesn't go past that. But it does seem as if we know the winners of the primary in New Jersey. Mickey Sherrill and Jack Citarelli, both of whom have won their primaries by a decent margin in both, as we know. So if we have any super chats now, I think the last call would be about now because we'll probably wrap it up right after the hour. I didn't want to stream for too long, but we did want to cover the results to see who would win, by what relative margins they would win by. I know, it's only 42%. I did stream on Sunday. I probably won't stream again until maybe sometime mid next week. Obviously, we have the New York primary. I think more people are going to be interested in that just because of the fact that it's being hyped up. You have a lot of interest because it's going to be super competitive, and some of these polls are very close. And also, we'll see how amped up is like the far left. How amped up is Andrew? Because Andrew Cuomo, he's a clown. He's scandal plagued. You have the nursing home scandal. You have all this other stuff, allegations, you name it. And then on the other side, you have crazy person. It's like this is the Democrats in 2025. And on the Republican side, it's probably going to be Curtis again. We'll see what happens on that front. But it's going to go, we understand it's probably going to go blue at the end of the day. Videomaker 2341 says most of the accelerationists don't live in New York City. There's some holdouts like me that can't afford to leave. I don't want to get shot to death. That's understandable. Like I said, I think it's a bit of a sadistic mindset. I think I can see where some of these people are coming from, but at the end of the day, it's like it's a big decision these people are going to have to make if they can move Evil African says my uncle vote. Okay, thank you for the thank. I'm sure you're totally the different person from the other guy who donated in British pounds. I'm sure this is not. I'm sure this is definitely not an alt. But again, super chats help the stream. I'm not going to complain about it. But you got your laughs in there. Congratulations. But 43% of the vote on the Democrat side is in. Republicans so far, 31%. Does seem as if overall they're aiming for around 500K votes. They only got 330K last go around, despite having a more competitive primary process. Democrats, on the other hand, they have the advantage. They have it baked in New Jersey primaries. You want to go back to 2024, look at the primaries there for the presidential race. I remember the primaries there being very lopsided in terms of turnout in favor of the Democrats, because if you want to pull this up, the Democrats outvoted the Republicans in the primary by a 220,000 vote margin. And that is with a Donald Trump rally several weeks before in Wildwood, New Jersey. So you still had that big gap. Seems like more people are going to turn out for the Republicans here than there, but this was also lower turnout than you saw in 2021 because the primaries were already done, and they've pretty much been done on the Republican side for this race, especially because Trump endorsed Jack, and I think that boosted his margin by more, probably by about 20 points more. So that definitely has helped him out quite a bit. And it's 8 o'clock Central. It's 9 o'clock Eastern. So we'll probably wrap things up in a minute or so here, but let's see what you guys have to say. We have more super chats. Videomaker 2341 says, okay, wait, we have to reload. And we're back. But Videomaker 2341 says Bloomberg endorsed Cuomo for mayor earlier today. I don't know how much pull he has at this stage in the game. Again, this is the same guy who spent like $500,000 plus on his presidential campaign to win American Samoa, and that was it. He could have bought the island for less, many people are saying. Thank you again, Evil African. He says you get the pass. Well, doesn't mean I have to use it right here, right now. Man Milk says Maryland resident here, any future statewide or in the Panhandle. Well, you'll have to wait for 2026, but it's not looking too good. It's such a blue state. It's one of the bluest states in the nation. Democrats already start off with such a high floor because even though the black vote is not 95-5 for them, maybe it's like 85-15. It's still, that's a big share of the electorate. And it's like you're starting off in a hole. And then the white demographic is very liberal. And it's like the northern D.C. suburbs and the eastern D.C. suburbs. And it's like somebody like a Larry Hogan can perform relatively well in the state, like at a statewide level. But even when it comes down to the national level, and it's also very gerrymandered. The Panhandle should have a Republican district if it wasn't. But Democrats, who will be the first to accuse everyone else of gerrymandering, even though a lot of the Republican state maps are because Democrats' geography is awful. The Democrats, they're the ones that know it's completely okay when they do it. But they really started it. They really did. And Mike Oxhart again, possibly this will be it's not the last one. We have another one on the way. Saying, do you think that if Madmani wins or whatever his name is, would New York go further right in 28? Extremism is unpopular. Yeah, I think so. Like I mentioned the accelerationist aspect of it, because if things get worse, more people will tend to wake up in a way. This is why you did see under the Biden presidency, when things got about as bad as they could get, so many people just decide to wake up. And the Democrats possibly have lost an entire generation or big chunks of an entire or multiple generations even because of it. So, politics is a give and take. The pendulum does move back and forth. But in New York, it's been so far to the left that there's been signs of people being fed up and voting Republican. And if you see, again, more reform that people are going to despise, yeah, you could see Staten Island get even redder and redder. You could see Long Island, because you have to deal with the city. Long Island, Trump has been able to run it up. Zeldin ran it up. Yeah, I mean, if this happens now, and then you'll get some of the blame will be put on Hochul, whether she fully deserves it or not, if things get worse in the next year, and it could shape up for a competitive governor's race. Obviously, the national environment matters. Trump's approval rating has a lot of room, in my opinion, to grow. Doesn't mean it has to grow far for Republicans to have a decent midterm, but so long as it's around the high 40s, low 50s, he should be fine. He really should be. I mean, Republicans are still gaining in registrations everywhere. It's largely about turnout. Sam Madsen for 5 says, why did the Republicans become even more lower propensity post-Dobbs? I think it's just the energy factor shifted away from them in those little races, many of which were able to be defined by abortion. Like Wisconsin Supreme Court, both of those races were turned into de facto abortion referendums, whether it was fair or not. So that was definitely a huge factor that drove that, in my opinion. The video maker 2341 says the recent data for progress poll for Madandi was conducted by his own PAC, did not include Staten Island. Cuomo's going to do well in Staten Island, although I suspect a lot of Staten Island voters are going to vote in the Republican primary instead of the Democrat primary, but we're going to find out in a couple of weeks. From what I understand, it starts off as this big field, and then it gets consolidated into a smaller field, like if they do ranked choice. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's how they did it last time, where you have one election, but and it's funny because didn't they have to redo parts of it for last cycle because it was conducted so poorly in 2021? That primary, it's there was a lot of shady shenanigans and all sorts of different directions going on. But let's see. Dr. Ron Paul says the GOP should give up on it. I don't think the GOP has to give up. I think it just depends on where you are, where you're running, and your messaging on the topic. I think that in order for them to be able to go on offense, unabashedly on the issue, the public has to be more accepting of that. And how are you exactly going to get them? That's on the backs of the pro-life movement. And many people, many leaders in the pro-life movement have spent time attacking politicians for playing their role as politicians instead of actually trying to go out there and change public opinion. And it's a negative feedback loop that has led to more people or less people being in the pro-life side of things and less pro-life people winning elections as a result. So they have to go back to the drawing board and kind of reassess it, because abortion wasn't as much of a third rail issue pre-Dobbs, so long as you weren't like Todd Aiken in that race. Ken Bliss for 10 says, thank you for all your hard work. Keep it up. And that's the 9th. If we could get 10, I think we could call the goal even. We'll see. If anyone else wants to send in a yellow super chat or above, be my guest. We also hit 10,000 total viewers for the stream as well. And like the stream up, let's get to 750 likes before we end it, or at least on replay. But it's just... Derpy Dude in chat said, what about the turnout numbers tonight? Democrats have substantially more ballots cast than Republicans. Does this show a reversal of the trends? It doesn't. And we went over this. You can only vote in a Democrat primary if you're a registered Democrat. And even though Trump lost the state by 200,000 votes instead of 600, 700,000 votes, Democrats had a 900,000 registered voter advantage ahead of this. So it's always something that's baked into the cake. A lot of it is correctable, but their advantage overall, I mean, even though you didn't have a primary on the Democrat side in 2021, they still outvoted the Republicans, who had a more contested primary than they do now, despite them getting higher overall turnout now than they had back then. So again, it's a mixed bag, but I don't think it's that indicative. This is going to be a very competitive race. And even if Cheryl wins by 5 to 10 points, I don't think that the primary was any raw indicator, especially when she's not doing all that well in the primary herself. And she's half the vote is in. When all the votes are counted, Jack may end up with more raw votes than her, which is important to note. Not like it really matters or makes that much of an impact, but yeah, it is definitely a state that's going to be very interesting to watch in 25. I mean, even 26 in some of these races, the margins, and definitely in 2028 could be a sleeper flip if Republicans have a good night. If not, probably trends will not be enough to carry Republicans in the state, but could keep it relatively close. So again, like I said, it's definitely a state to watch. Someone says, I don't want to hear a damn thing about the Democrat Party being done. Well, they're not done. They're an institution. They've been around for a long time. They're going to be around for a much longer time. But again, the state level and off-year elections are not indicative of the macro. You have the micro. I've said for a while they're doing extremely well in the micro. Republicans aren't showing up. It doesn't mean the national environment has changed away from the Republicans' favor by any meaningful amount. It just means that Democrats are the type to show up and vote in every little election, and Republicans aren't. Because if you go back pre-election, the special election results were identical in terms of how much they overestimated or overfavored Democrats in many places, not all, but many places, compared to where they're at now. So it's virtually identical in that department. But in terms of their future, it is not very bright. The House map is going to be much harder for them after 2030. The Senate map is still not going to be good for them, period. They may not retake the Senate again until there's a realignment, unless they run the table. If Republicans ran the table just as much as the Democrats would have to run the table to win the Senate, Republicans would have 60 Senate seats and a filibuster-proof majority. So both of those are equal in terms of their likelihood in the near future. So the presidential side of things, a lot can happen. We don't know who the hell their candidate's going to be. And it's going to be fun to watch that shit show. I mean, that's going to be pure entertainment. 2027 is going to be a very fun year for us, watching all these clowns jump in the race. And we could have a lot of people. So the video maker says, in the future, you think I should switch Dem to vote in New York City Democrat primaries? I disagree. Because that means that you won't be able to vote in Republican primaries in the state either. So it's up to you. But I think we're going to wrap things up. I think we're going to end the stream. It's been a good hour and 11 minutes, but I think that now is the time to wrap it up. So anyways, guys, make sure you like the stream down below. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell. Do all that good stuff. Comment if you're watching on replay. And I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle out.